All right, that was the presentation, the mind to work and the sphere to work. The mind to work and the sphere to work, which talks to what we had touched upon yesterday with regards to just perhaps having a different thinking, different mindset than what we have had in the past couple of years. Because the wise and great once said, you can't do the same things the same way, but expecting different results to take place. And that was Albert Einstein, who said that same is true for local government. All faced with all these challenges you're all aware of, and if you keep on doing things the same way, so obviously we are not going to come out of, I will even say, crisis that we are faced when we look at some of the statistics that have been produced by the National Treasury and other departments of government in that respect. So most of us will be aware of this, that globally it is said that only 2% of people actually really think. Yeah, we all do some form of thinking, but really taking time critically to think. And then we have 3% that think they think, and then just the majority of people in the world, then for them it's just about doing things, waking up and just getting by and doing what they just want to do on the day. And that is why it is also then said that 2% are the ones that really have immersed much resources of this world because they think. So they get resources around to rally behind them, but for them what they do is just sit in that corner office and then they think. Then they come up with ideas, and then they obviously dish those ideas for what needs to be done in that respect. So this quote as well, it is in dispute as to whether was it Henry Ford who said it or was it Bernard Shaw who said it. So I just left it blank because many others also have quoted it. Because obviously it's something that has been also researched and backed up that predominantly it is the case. So it then says to us, we really have to take some time to think, and that is why my good friend Mr. Nolte always talks about ensuring that we have to plan, because even for some of the projects that are out there in municipalities, even Nosipomba earlier spoke about that, where the technical department especially, nothing against them, not trying to generalize, but some, she was just making an example, that because they need to deliver, and at times because of time constraints, the grants must be spent, but there wasn't much thought process put into it, into some of those projects, and then thereafter they ended up being implemented, but there wasn't proper planning, and then there's ended up being misalignment organizationally because of the improper planning. So obviously before planning, one needs to sit down and think. And then Henry Ford, that we should mostly know, then said if everyone is moving forward, then the success that everyone is looking for then takes care of itself. And I just added those other words, that if we all think the same direction, so to say, and then if that's the case, we think, we plan, we do together, and then that will then ultimately ensure that we can see an improvement, because nothing will just change overnight. It takes time, but if we are all thinking in the same direction and then further acting in the same direction, then that will ensure that we can see an improvement taking place in local government. Then for my good leaders, this does not make good English sense for those who know. I know others are very particular with the words, but I just put it as a statement that public leadership will be remembered by the impact that is made to society, improvements that have been brought in, servant that is there, and also coming up with a workable and progressive vision that is laid out for future generations. Because as said, some of the things, we'll find them the way they are, but then if we can cast a vision 10, 20, 30 years, and then ensure put proper structures and systems and processes in place, then progressively we can get to that. But there are some leaders that we're seeing fruits now, but it's because of the vision that was laid out years back. So for those who are in leadership, just think of those three, because sometimes we can get so taken by the day-to-day of the runnings, especially in a municipal environment. We always say there's always fires that we are fighting. But there's something coming that is coming, now you get so much consumed, but just ensure that ultimately when you look back, you can attest that there has been an impact, the improvements that you made during your term, and also you have laid some foundations for the future, others to proceed. So those are the three aspects. Now, on the mind itself, I definitely not a medical person who understands some of these things. Mr. Danny Nolte here, as I keep on referring to, he studied medicine, so he knows more about some medical issues. So this is the brain, which is said to be the hardware for all of us. All these nice fancy words that are put in there. So that's the brain part. And then you have the mind. So I normally just describe the two, the brain being the hardware, and then the mind being the software, like in your computer, where your subconscious mind then does the thinking and all of that. But the brain is then the hardware, which is then the tangible, and the intangible, which is the mind that thinks. But furthermore, that's again the brain, which you can further unpack it in different parts and pieces that comprises what then makes up the brain. So obviously, if something is not working properly and not where it's supposed to be and not functioning the way it's supposed to function, then the whole brain is not going to work. Imagine now, if you use the same analogy for us in local government, we're all in our different corners doing what we're supposed to do. But if one thing is not functional, we just decide one nerve there, one cell, brain cell decide not to work for whatever reason, then it's going to cause the whole brain not to function the manner it's actually supposed to function. So it means that there must be coordination, there must be a way of all these working together, and that same analogy then applies to us in local government. What informs the mind is more of the will. It's the brain itself. What informs it is the will, it's the mind, it's the emotions. There's a book I normally read. I always go through it. It was written by Dr. Caroline Leaf. It says, switch on your brain, because you can actually recalibrate your brain through the workings of your mind. So that is a subject for another day, and I said I'm not an expert in that, but I read that book, and I will also recommend it if you want to have a look. So it's called Switch on Your Brain by Dr. Caroline Leaf. Then it just gives you how to actually ensure you can switch on that brain to think more. And obviously the emotions as well plays a role, because as an example, if you are angry, it normally happens that when you are really angry because of your emotions, you can't control them, you end up doing stupid things. Sorry to use that word, but it does happen. And then once you've done a stupid thing, and then why did I do that? But somewhere, somehow, psychologically, you thought about it, and then you acted upon it, and it became a stupid thing because of your emotions that you couldn't control. So then the emotions as well then play a role in terms of your brain and the thinking, and then the action thereafter. And then obviously the output, depending on what you're putting into your brain, your mind to think, you can either progress in life, you can either regress, or you can improve. There's various other outputs that can apply into that. Now let's take this briefly into the public sector, local government in particular. You then have various aspects, structures, systems, funding allocations that pertains to local government now as a sphere. There's quite a lot, again, where you can unpack local government into, but I just picked up those just few aspects that make up our local government as a whole, because that's what predominantly we are all about. And obviously, it is informed by legislation. There's a lot of them we spoke about yesterday, strategies and the planning that what informs local government to work. Like the other example I was utilizing earlier, what informs the brain to work is then the will the mind and those emotions. So for local government, there are various as well, but those three mainly play the role. The planning part of it doesn't only involve the municipal planning, but from a national point of view, from a provincial point of view, from a district point of view, those were touched on as well yesterday. So all of that then shapes our local government workings. Ultimately, in all of that, the output, we then obviously want an efficient, effective, economical, environmentally friendly, and I do now foresee an added factor, which will be the smart, sustainable service delivery that is upcoming. But definitely in South Africa, Africa as a whole, we are going to take some time to realize that while we still have issues of load shedding and all of that. But that is something that I do foresee in time will be added into the triple E's. Now the fourth one of environmental, and then the smart aspect will also come. So just like the mind, you put everything together to work. Same is true and ought to be applicable for our local government, for us to think about and ensure that if you want the mind to think on the other side, the same then remains to be true within our local government sphere, where we put all these pieces together, the puzzles together, collaborations, complementing each other, and not competing. Imagine if one of your brain cells is trying to compete with the other. You know, I'm better than you, I'm better. Nothing is going to function and work properly. So it's just for us to then ensure that we collaborate, we complement each other, we ensure that whatever that we do ultimately is to ensure the output that we are all looking for our local government. Because ultimately, most of us that are in this room are here as public servants of local government to make sure that our municipalities render these sustainable service deliveries as intended. So lastly, that's my last slide. We have to understand the problem, diagnose the problem. I know COGTA is doing a few of these studies right now, looking at what is the actual problem, the complexity of the problem in local government, because if we don't know the problem, then how are we going to solve the problem? So there are those assessment tools that they are working on. I know there's some service providers that are assisting them in this regard to ensure that we can get to that point of understanding the real problem of local government. Let's relook the approach. I think this is something that becomes very important. I was sharing earlier to say things have not worked in the past years. So obviously we have to relook at to how going forward we are going to now change the landscape. Again, saying the same words, we can't do the same things all over again expecting different results. So our approach has to be different. I was reviewing one asset management plan. I was telling one of my colleagues that asset management plan, the one who produced it, he was adamant that he produced a very good asset management plan for a municipality. But if you look into it, it's just talking about GRAP, it's talking about MFMA and everything else. And for them, they think that is it. But asset management plan ought to look at your whole asset, the life cycle and everything else that goes into it. So obviously, if you have an asset management plan that is not in order, then you expect the municipalities to then make use of that asset management plan for the next 5 to 10 years. So the municipality basically is going the wrong direction, but you did something. So let's relook our approaches going forward for what we're actually looking at. What resources do we have? Good thing yesterday it was shared about the funding that is available for repairs and maintenance especially, but also before look at the funding, are we effectively utilizing and maximizing what we have? I won't go into that, but we have to take cognizance of what resources, including internally. Mr. Mashogo was sharing with us yesterday, late yesterday, we had a nice get-together somewhere, but not with the other heavy drinks. We just had water. So obviously when you get together, you know, stories do come up. So yeah, but it was just sharing about the issues of capacity, because at times we are all complaining about issues that municipalities don't have the capacity. But are we really gluing everything together and ensuring that there's integration, there's communication, there's synergies, even with what we have, the resources that are available in a municipality? Maybe I'll share later because we'll bring him on. Because sometimes we can have the resources, but they're not working together. And sometimes we then want to add to say, no, let's get 10 more technologists. Let's get more 5 engineers into the system. but they're just going to come there and cause more problems than actually fixing it, because already the system is dysfunctional. Sort the system, the resources that you have, then you will see the gaps where you really have to add on those particular gaps. Uncomplicated. Sometimes we complicate matters. We try to be too, intelligent and try to do too much. They just uncomplicate things. Let's somebody make mention of the back to basics. Sometimes which basics are those. But I think sometimes we just need to take a step back and say, let's put away the higher grade of things. Sometimes we want these fancy words, fancy English, and all of these nice things. There's space and time for that. We've got Dr. Pile here from DUT. Maybe he'll speak high words from academia. Let's leave it to them. For us, let's uncomplicate this thing. We know what we want, so let's keep it simple and straightforward. Sing the same tune internally and externally, from a municipal point of view and externally. That is national, provincial, as well as our municipalities at the bottom. We must all sing the same tune. We have got to. Because if not, well, for those who know music, it's not going to go well. So we just have to find a way of working with each other and ensuring we've got one direction that we are headed, especially, as I say, from a national point of view. Because if you can't get it right there, Coctas, Salgas, MISAs, National Treasury, and everybody else, how do you expect the same to be true in a local municipality? So we just have to make sure that it all works together. And then obviously synergize and integrate, because if that's not the case, then unfortunately nothing is going to work. So that was my presentation that was meant to be done yesterday. And so I'm glad that I got the chance to redo it this morning while everyone was still coming in. And it has given us time just to make sure that our place is getting filled up. So we're just worried that others are gone for Black Friday, but it looks like you have ensured that you are here. So with those words, thank you so much. That was just my brief presentation. Well, you can always clap for me. How? Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you have taken a few, just as I said, just some thought leadership sort of presentation. At this time, according to our program that was meant to be at 9:15, we'll be very short on this as well. On capacitation and recognition, we do a few aspects that we work with DUT and others as well that are now coming on board. There is the National School of Government that is also with us for the Indaba. They also further now want us to engage further with regards to some of the capacitation program. Is NSG here this morning, putting them on the spot? Oh, yeah, they're back. Okay, hey, that's good. There's Dr. Steven there as well. It would have been, if I mention of them and they're not here, maybe they're still in the beach. Oh, well, the weather is not good. But they are here. Thank you so much. Let's give a hand to NSG for being with us, the National School of Government. We appreciate your presence. And as said, we hope that we are going to continue these discussions to find a way of working a solution to this problem that we all face. Quickly, I'm going to take 5 minutes of that presentation. It's not a very long one, but it will give a good context and background to what I'm just going to share now. If you can just put that other presentation quickly, and then I will proceed. All right, I'm just going to run through the works of the center for all of us to get to understand what we're all about. But as much as we're doing all the talking here, but we believe that it's the actions that really talk. So we always want to make sure that there is the works. Some of the initiatives that have been undertaken, I won't go through much into these, but one of the critical ones will be the last two. I touched on yesterday that there is an academic book that we are looking at putting together with regards to municipal asset management that has now been looked at. And also DUT is now embarking on reviewing their syllabus for public management to ensure that they can start including now asset management as a subject matter. Because previously, most times in even other universities, asset management is just under SCM. It's just a subtopic under SCM. Imagine such, a discipline that ought to be a standalone, but unfortunately, it's as it stands in most universities, it is under SCM. Unless you take it into the engineering fraternity, then they talk of asset management. But remember, asset management is broad. You can look at it from an asset management of engineering or asset management from a liquid point of view, the investments and all of that. But for us in local government, it's the broad spectrum, all the assets that ought to be managed in a municipality. And also importantly, the MOU with SALGA has been signed nationally, and we are trusting that this was signed off about 2 weeks ago by the acting CEO of SALGA and ourselves, and that is something that we are hoping will then also be of much add value to our municipalities, because we have mostly been concentrated here in KZN most of these years, but now we are going to spread the message further into other provinces. You can give a hand for that, please. Thank you very much. We don't have a ceremony for the sign-off and all of that, because we said, let's make the agreement alive. Let's put feet into the agreement. Let's make the agreement work. Because you know what, sometimes we've got these nice agreements, but they just become a piece of paper. But we just want to make sure that this agreement comes alive and we make it work. Then we can come back and then tell you how this agreement has actually worked for our local government. Initiatives 23-25, capacitation programs will continue, including councillors. More material will be produced, especially for the auditing guide for municipal assets. That's something that we are quite passionate about and want to ensure that we come up with that. NSG, as I mentioned, want to have more engagements, as well as universities. Outside-in approach, which is the ABCD model, asset-based community development model, that is being practiced in other parts of the world. We want to find a way of bringing it here and localizing it so that communities can start to own the assets and also safeguard the assets. Because currently, if they're destroying their own assets, something is wrong. There has to be a bit of a change and a relook into that. So that ABCD approach is something that we are also now going to explore, working with our academic partner of DUT in terms of research, as well as other academia that will come in. And then that continental impact we spoke about, the SADC countries that we are definitely going to look into. Data collection and impact tracking. We spoke about data yesterday, same as well for us. That is something that we really, really want to ensure that we have a pool of data that can then tell us whether we're in the right track or not, one as an organization, but importantly then as a sphere of local government when it comes to the improvement of local government. Stakeholder relations, that is standard. And then the National Committee on Municipal Asset Management. This has been going for the past 3 years or so in talks. And then now with that signing of the MOU will now be realized to ensure that there is that National Committee. United we stand and divided we fall. That is something that we stand for, and we are hoping that together we'll make sure that we move in the same pace and direction going forward. Because that systems, processes, integration, it all belongs to us and also begins with us to make sure that it actually happens. All right, we can clap again for my presentation. So I'm a referee and a player, this morning. I'm trying to be quick as much as possible so that we don't finish late, because I know others are taking flight afterwards, so we're going to try and keep this to time as much as possible. So I'm going to be calling upon Dr. Pillay. Just come in just for a few moments. He'll share for 2 minutes from DUT on that capacitation and recognition. And also, there was a professional certificate program that we had undertaken in the past month. It was a 4-day course, but spread up into 2 months, 2 days in that particular month, that we did with DUT, which was quite a success. And I said that's where we even got to learn about the ABCD model, because we had a speaker from the USA, Chicago, who came through and then informed us of the workings of that ABCD model at Chicago. And we are hoping at some point in time we will go for a visit there. There's Madam President from SECFARO. Let me recognize you as well, Madam President from SECFARO. My president as well, which I highly respect and honor, and also the other board member sitting next to Doctor at some point, Dr. Tubi. Some things we must prophesy over them, so yeah, we're trusting Dr. Kunene. We all know him, as he will come through later. So with having said that, So there's much that we still want to do and ensure that with all this capacitation that we are doing, because we don't want just to tick the box that we're doing training, but want to see the value and impact in our local municipalities. And one thing, I even had one story yesterday of another asset officer that has now got a job at one of the municipalities as an asset manager. She came here yesterday to get that certificate because she couldn't be here today, because now she must go and start a new job. And she said she was able to get that asset manager position because of CMAM. She has been attending our trainings and all of that, and gained enough knowledge, gained enough understanding. And there's also another gentleman here. I know okay, I'm trying to look, my face can't see. He also got promoted. Oh yeah, now I can see him there at the back. He also got promoted to be a manager, and he told me about 2 months back or so that he also was religiously coming to our sessions of CMM that we always have. And that's what we want to see as well, because people, yes, will be promoted at some point, but it's good when they are promoted, they've got the knowledge and the expertise to function in that particular level that they are at. And that is what we actually aim to do with some of these, or most of these trainings that we are undertaking, and especially now bringing in more of the academia closer to us. Because at some point, as much as these are short courses, we now want to get into some post-grad courses for asset management in particular that we are now going to have, because most of our asset officials just have diplomas and degrees, because there's no qualification beyond the diploma that is asset management, let alone even on the undergrad. So there's something that we then want to look into, but also we call it a ladder of learning, where we'll also start to have a ladder of learning even for other Ngcobo levels below the postgrad in that respect.